Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. The towel, the basin, and water are important symbols for us tonight. In the early Christian days, when people were invited to a meal, after walking through dirty roads infested with pollen like we have in Atlanta, they were greeted by somebody at the door with a towel, a basin, and water to wash their feet and their hands. The person at the door was a fundamental part of the meal, even though that person never sat down to participate in the meal. Typically, the person that greeted you at the door and doing the washing was a lowly, nameless slave to the people that might have been gathered around the table. That is why Jesus shocks his disciples when he takes a towel and he starts washing their feet. Peter can't understand it because Jesus was mirroring the work of an insignificant slave. Peter says something like this. He says, "Are you kidding me, Lord? Are you going to wash my feet? No, you can't do that. That's the work of slaves, of servants, of someone from a different class than us." But Jesus insists and says, "Unless I wash you, you have no share in me." Here's another way to interpret Jesus' words. Unless you take the position of a slave, unless you take the position of a servant, you cannot see me. You cannot claim to know me. You can't even understand what the gospel is all about. And Peter responds, "Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head." A towel, a basin, and some water. These things remind us what it means to be followers of Christ. Yes, there is an element of vulnerability in what we're about to do. There is an element of vulnerability when someone is washing your feet. There's a good chance someone will notice my feet. And you will notice that my feet are the reason your feet wear shower shoes. They're not that bad. And that's all part of the awkwardness of this evening. But more than that, towel, the basin, and the water are about what it means to be a servant, and how servanthood is an integral part of creating something that we like to call koinonia. Servanthood is an integral part of creating holy community. When we act as servants to one another, during the best of times in our lives and during the worst of times, we create koinonia. We become a community that practices grace, excellence, and hospitality. That is exactly what Jesus is doing at the Last Supper. Jesus embodies the role of the servant. And in doing so, he creates a new atmosphere, an atmosphere of holy community. Some might even say holy communion. And I believe this is fundamentally the call of the church in today's world: to serve and to create community. A few days ago, Canon Maxwell forwarded me an article that was the basis for his letter to Anna in this week's Cathedral Times. He forwarded it to me and said, "This will preach on Maundy Thursday." And I read it and I couldn't agree more. The article is an interview with Francis Clemens, a man who spent years working alongside a Presbyterian minister by the name of Fred Rogers. In the interview, Clemens describes a scene very similar to the one in today's gospel. The scene occurred on Fred Rogers' television show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Some of you have seen that more than you want. For 25 years, Francis Clemens played the role of the policeman on the beloved children's program. Clemens joined the cast of the show in 1968, becoming the first African American to have a recurring role in a kids' television series. And in the decades he spent as a part of the show, in the interview, Clemens said that there is one scene in particular that he remembers with great emotion. It was from an episode that aired in 1969, in which Mr. Rogers had been resting his feet in a plastic pool on a hot day. And Clemens recalled the moment when Fred Rogers invited him over. He said, "He invited me to come over and to rest my feet in the water with him." Clemens went on to say in the interview, "The icon, Fred Rogers, not only was showing my brown skin in the tub with his white skin as two friends, but as I was getting out of that tub, he started helping me by drying my feet." A towel, some water, and a basin. Clemens says the scene, which the two also revisited in their last episode together in 1993, touched him in ways that he never, ever expected. A towel, a basin, and water. That's what it means to embody the role of a servant. In the context of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, a towel, a basin, and some water did wonders to create a real and genuine neighborhood. In the spirit we try to embody here at the Cathedral of St. Philip, a towel, basin, and water help us create and sustain koinonia. So let me conclude by saying that you might be curious as to how Francis Clemens got the role of the policeman. Well, Fred Rogers noticed Clemens by hearing him sing in church. Why is that important? Well, tonight we will wash the feet of those sitting next to us, of those singing next to us, and of those gathered around this table. For those who were gathered in the upper room, and for those gathered in this room, Christ teaches us what it means to be a disciple and to create holy community. We are called to take what we do in here out into the world. And it all starts with a towel, a basin, and some water.